The email arrived at 6:42 a.m., sandwiched between a grocery receipt and a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to turn off. Subject: Estate of Harold Whitman, will reading. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, my coffee cooling untouched on the kitchen counter. My father's name looked strange in that font, too official, too final. Harold Whitman. Not Dad. Not the man who taught me how to ride a bike and then stopped calling. Not the man who laughed when I said I wanted to study finance and told me I should aim for something simpler. Just Harold Whitman. The email was brief, polite, clinical. It informed me that the reading would take place on Friday at 10 a.m. at the law offices of Barnes & Klein. Attendance encouraged but not mandatory, as if grief could be optional, as if curiosity were the only reason someone like me would show up. I almost deleted it. For a moment, I genuinely considered pretending I never saw it, that I'd let whatever story my parents were telling themselves continue without interruption, that I'd let them believe I was still the same daughter they'd stopped worrying about years ago. But then my phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "You got the email, I assume. No need to make this harder than it has to be." I didn't reply. I closed my laptop, wrapped my fingers around my mug, and let the heat ground me. The smell of coffee, the quiet hum of my apartment, the early light creeping through the blinds. This was my life now. Calm, earned, mine. And I wasn't going to skip the room they never expected me to walk into. The morning of the will reading, I dressed carefully, not expensively, not dramatically, just deliberately. Black slacks, a soft gray blouse, low heels I could walk in without thinking about my balance. I tied my hair back, simple and neat, the way I always did when I needed to remind myself to stay focused. On my kitchen table sat a slim, dark folder. I hadn't opened it that morning. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was inside. I picked it up, slid it into my bag, and paused by the door. For a split second, my reflection in the mirror caught my eye. I looked ordinary. No visible armor, no sharp edges. The kind of woman people underestimate because it makes their lives easier. I smiled faintly. Then I left. The conference room at Barnes & Klein was brighter than I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished wood table, leather chairs arranged neatly around it. The kind of space designed to feel neutral, impartial, incapable of favoritism. My parents were already there. My mother sat closest to the head of the table, handbag placed carefully at her side, posture rigid with practiced grief. She wore black, of course, pearls at her throat, her hair perfectly styled, the image of a woman who wanted to be seen as the rightful center of this moment. My father stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and irritated. He didn't notice me at first. My brother did. He looked up from his seat, eyes flicking to the door, and his eyebrows rose just slightly. Not surprise, more like mild disbelief. The way you react when something you didn't plan for quietly appears anyway. "Well," he said, loud enough for the room to hear, "look who decided to show up." My mother turned. Her expression shifted instantly. A tight smile stretched across her face, the kind she used at family gatherings when she wanted to appear gracious while communicating exactly the opposite. "You came," she said. "I didn't think you would." "I was invited," I replied calmly. My father ended his call and turned, his gaze traveling over me quickly before dismissing me just as fast. "This is just procedural. No need to get your hopes up." I nodded. "I'm not." That seemed to amuse my brother. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You know this is mostly a formality, right? Dad had everything sorted out years ago." "I'm sure," I said. My mother let out a soft laugh. Not warm, not kind. "You always did misunderstand how these things work," she said. "The reading is just for closure." Closure. I took a seat near the far end of the table, placing my bag at my feet. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself. I'd learned long ago that explaining only made them more confident in their assumptions. They thought I was here for scraps, for curiosity, for nostalgia. They had no idea what I was carrying. The lawyer arrived precisely at 10. Mr. Barnes was older than I expected. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, movements measured and careful. He greeted my parents politely, shook my brother's hand, then turned to me. His eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Miss Whitman," he said, nodding, "thank you for coming." There was something in his tone that made my mother stiffen. "Let's begin," Mr. Barnes continued, taking his seat at the head of the table. He opened a thick folder, adjusted his glasses, and glanced around the room. "The purpose of today's meeting is to formally read the last will and testament of Harold Whitman, dated March 17th of last year." My father nodded, already bored. Yes, he said, "we've been over this." Mr. Barnes paused. "I'm sure," replied he, "but there are legal requirements that must be met." My mother folded her hands in her lap, lips pursed. "Of course," she said, "we just want to get this done." The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. At first, it was exactly what they expected: property listings, accounts, charitable donations. My parents relaxed visibly with each familiar line. My brother checked his phone. They weren't listening so much as waiting for confirmation of what they already believed. I listened, not because I was nervous, but because I was curious how long it would take. Then Mr. Barnes hesitated. It was subtle, barely noticeable, a slight pause between sentences, a shift in posture. His fingers tightened around the page. My mother noticed. "Is there a problem?" she asked. "No," he said quickly, "just making sure I proceed in the correct order." He turned a page. "And at this point there is an addendum." My father frowned. "An addendum?" "Yes," Mr. Barnes said, "a legally binding amendment submitted 6 months prior to Mr. Whitman's passing." My brother straightened. "That doesn't sound right. Dad didn't mention anything about an addendum." Mr. Barnes adjusted his glasses again. "Not all matters are discussed openly." Something flickered across my mother's face. Not fear, annoyance. "Well," she said sharply, "let's hear it." The lawyer read on. "The following stipulations supersede any prior arrangements concerning discretionary assets, contingent holdings, and personal trusts." My father laughed under his breath. "Discretionary assets," he muttered. "This is unnecessary." Mr. Barnes ignored him. "As per Mr. Whitman's explicit instructions, documentation pertaining to this addendum was distributed to one party in advance." My mother blinked. "One party?" she repeated. Mr. Barnes looked up. "Yes," he said, "that party is present." All eyes turned to me. For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Then my brother laughed, loudly, sharply. "You've got to be kidding," he said. "Her?" My mother followed suit, shaking her head. "This must be some clerical error," she said. "She wasn't involved in anything." I felt their eyes on me, heavy with disbelief and something close to embarrassment, as if my mere presence was a disruption to the order of things. Mr. Barnes cleared his throat again. "There is no error," he said carefully. "Miss Whitman was contacted directly by your father." My father's face darkened. "That's impossible," he said. "I would remember." Mr. Barnes hesitated. Then he said, "You may not have been informed." The words landed heavier than they sounded. My mother laughed again, sharper this time. "Well, this is absurd," she said. "If you'll excuse me, I think we all know how this ends." I reached down and lifted my bag onto my lap. Slowly, deliberately. The sound of the zipper was quiet, but it seemed to cut through the room. I pulled out the folder. It was thicker than it looked. Dark navy. No labels on the outside, just clean edges and a weight that suggested intention. I placed it on the table in front of me. The laughter stopped. Mr. Barnes's eyes dropped to the folder, then widened. He leaned forward slightly, as if pulled by instinct. My mother noticed. "What is that?" she asked. I didn't answer. The lawyer's face went pale, not metaphorically, literally. The color drained from his skin as he stared at the folder like it might bite him. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. My father leaned forward now, irritation giving way to something else. "What is going on?" he demanded. Mr. Barnes swallowed. "That folder," he said slowly, "contains documents I drafted personally." My brother's smile vanished. My mother's hand tightened around her purse. "That's impossible," she said. "We would have known." Mr. Barnes looked at me again. "Ms. Whitman," he said, voice carefully neutral, "did your father instruct you to bring this today?" "Yes," I replied. My voice didn't shake. "He said you'd recognize it." The lawyer closed his own folder, very carefully. "I do," he said, and in that moment I saw it. Not panic, respect. My parents didn't notice yet. They were still too busy assuming this would end the way everything always had, with them on top, with me quietly dismissed. They had no idea, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The room felt smaller now, tighter, as if the air itself had realized something important was about to change. Mr. Barnes took a slow breath. "I believe," he said, "we need to pause the reading." My mother shot to her feet. "Yo, we do not." My brother stared at the folder like it was a threat. "What's in that?" he asked me. I met his gaze. "Everything you weren't told," I said. And for the first time since I walked into that room, no one laughed. The silence that followed my words wasn't dramatic. It didn't explode. It didn't echo. It settled. Heavy, awkward, unavoidable. My mother was still standing, one hand gripping the back of her chair as if the room might tilt without her permission. My father's jaw was tight, the familiar expression he wore when things didn't obey him. My brother kept staring at the folder, eyes narrowed, as though if he looked hard enough, he could will it to disappear. Mr. Barnes was the only one who seemed to understand the gravity of what had just entered the room. "This isn't appropriate," my mother said sharply. "We're in the middle of a legal proceeding." Mr. Barnes didn't look at her. "Actually," he replied, "we've just reached the most important part of it." He extended his hand toward the folder, then hesitated, glancing at me for permission. I slid it a few inches closer. "Please," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, not because I was afraid, but because a strange calm had settled over me, the kind that comes when you've already done the hardest part, and everything else is just process. Mr. Barnes opened the folder, carefully, respectfully. The first thing he pulled out was a letter, cream-colored paper, my father's handwriting unmistakable, neat, deliberate, slightly slanted to the right. I'd spent years pretending I didn't remember it. Birthday cards, notes left on the counter when he still lived at home. Mr. Barnes read the first line silently. Then his eyes lifted. "I believe," he said, "this should be read aloud." My mother scoffed. "If this is some old note—" "It's dated," Mr. Barnes interrupted gently, "2 days before Mr. Whitman's surgery." That shut her up. He cleared his throat. "If you're reading this, then I didn't get the chance to explain things the way I intended." My father's face drained of color. "This decision is mine alone. I made it without pressure, without confusion, and without anyone else's input." My brother shifted in his chair. "I know this will come as a shock to some of you. That's unavoidable. I also know it may be uncomfortable. That is intentional." My mother let out a sharp breath. "This is ridiculous." Mr. Barnes continued. "There are truths about my family that have gone unaddressed for too long. Patterns I allowed, silences I mistook for peace." My chest tightened, not with pain, but recognition. I failed one of my children by assuming resilience meant indifference. Mr. Barnes paused. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the overhead lights.
My father stared at the table. I told myself she didn't need me, that she was strong enough on her own. What I didn't admit was that I was avoiding discomfort. My mother shook her head slowly. This is manipulation. Mr. Barnes ignored her again. She never asked for more than honesty. I gave her distance instead. My brother swallowed. This addendum corrects that. Mr. Barnes folded the letter and set it aside. I'll continue with the legal portion, he said. My mother slammed her hand on the table. No, she snapped. You will not. This is emotional nonsense. Harold wasn't in his right mind. Mr. Barnes looked at her then, really looked at her. There is medical documentation confirming full cognitive capacity at the time this addendum was executed, he said calmly. I was present. 2 witnesses were present. This is legally sound. My father finally spoke. What exactly did he change? He asked. His voice was quieter than usual, less confident. Mr. Barnes drew out another document. The discretionary trust, he said, previously intended to be dissolved and distributed evenly among immediate family. My brother exhaled, relieved. See, he said quickly, that's what we expected. Mr. Barnes lifted his eyes. It is no longer intended to be distributed evenly. My mother's nails dug into the leather of her chair. To whom? She demanded. Mr. Barnes didn't answer immediately. He turned the document toward me. Miss Whitman, he said. May I? Yes, I replied. He took a breath. As per this addendum, the Whitman Discretionary Trust, along with its subsidiary holdings, has been reassigned. He paused. Solely. My mother laughed, high, sharp. Oh, come on.
Mr. Barnes finished the sentence. To Eleanor Whitman. My name. Not daughter, not her, not someone. My full name. My brother stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. That's not possible, he said. That trust is worth... I know exactly what it's worth, I said quietly. All 3 of them turned to me. That was new. Mr. Barnes nodded. Ms. Whitman has been briefed on the trust's structure, assets, and legal protections. My father stared at me. When? He asked. 6 months ago, I replied. You never said anything, my mother snapped. You never asked, I said. Her mouth opened, then closed. Mr. Barnes continued. Additionally, there are stipulations. Of course there were. He flipped to the next page. Control of the trust is not merely symbolic, he said. Ms. Whitman has full authority over asset management, liquidation, and redistribution. My brother let out a disbelieving laugh. This is insane. It's binding, Mr. Barnes replied. And, he added, there is a clause restricting interference. My mother's eyes narrowed. Interference? Yes, he said. Any attempt to challenge, undermine, or obstruct Ms. Whitman's authority triggers an automatic review and potential forfeiture of other allocations. My father's head snapped up. Forfeiture of what? He asked. Mr. Barnes met his gaze. Personal property, secondary accounts, any remaining discretionary distributions. The room felt suddenly smaller. My mother sank back into her chair. You're saying, she said slowly, that if we contest this, you risk losing more, Mr. Barnes finished. My brother turned to me, anger flashing across his face. You planned this, he accused. I met his eyes. No, I responded to it. My father rubbed his temples. Why? He asked quietly. Why you? I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't have one, but because this wasn't about convincing him. It was his choice, I said finally. Mr. Barnes cleared his throat.
"There is one more component," he said. My mother looked up sharply. "What now?" Mr. Barnes pulled out another envelope. "This pertains to disclosure," he said, "specifically records of communication." My heart beat once. Hard.
My father stiffened. What kind of records? Mr. Barnes opened the envelope. Emails, letters, financial advisories. He glanced at me again, and a documented request from Mr. Whitman. My mother's voice dropped. Request for what? Mr. Barnes hesitated. To investigate, he said carefully, why certain information was not relayed to Miss Whitman over the years. My brother laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You can't be serious. I am, Mr. Barnes said. He slid a printed email across the table. My father picked it up. I watched his expression change as he read. Confusion, recognition, something like shame. What is this? My mother asked. Mr. Barnes answered. An email from Miss Whitman, sent 3 years ago. My throat tightened. You never told me she reached out, my father said quietly. My mother waved her hand dismissively. It was probably about money. No, I said. They all looked at me again. It was about information, I continued, about the trust, about how things were structured. I asked for transparency. My brother frowned. You never mentioned that. I mentioned it, I said. You laughed. The memory surfaced uninvited. A family dinner. A joke about me suddenly caring about legal stuff. Laughter around the table. My question dismissed as curiosity. Mr. Barnes spoke again. Mr. Whitman documented his concern that Miss Whitman was being deliberately excluded from conversations relevant to her future. My mother's face hardened. That's a lie. It's written, Mr. Barnes replied. My father stared at the table. When were you going to tell me? He asked my mother. She didn't answer. Mr. Barnes continued. In response, Mr. Whitman requested an independent review of how information flowed within the family. My brother's face went pale. What kind of review? He asked. Mr. Barnes closed the folder. The kind that leaves a paper trail. Silence fell again. Not the heavy kind, the dangerous kind. My mother's voice was tight. This is outrageous. Mr. Barnes stood. We will adjourn for 10 minutes, he said. I suggest you use that time wisely. He gathered his papers and left the room. The door closed softly behind him. Then my brother turned on me. You really did this? He said. You waited? You let us? No, I said. You assumed. My father finally looked at me. Why didn't you fight us? He asked. Why didn't you push harder? I held his gaze. Because every time I did, I said, you told me to stop making things difficult. My mother stood abruptly. This isn't over, she said. You think a folder makes you powerful? I looked at her. No, I said calmly. It makes me informed. She laughed bitterly. You think you've won? I didn't answer, because this wasn't the win. This was the beginning of something much more uncomfortable for them. The door opened. Mr. Barnes returned. Shall we continue? He asked. My parents didn't look ready, but readiness had never stopped anything important before, and as I leaned back in my chair, I realized something with startling clarity. They hadn't lost control today. They'd lost the illusion that they ever had it. When Mr. Barnes took his seat again, the room felt altered, not rearranged, not reset, revealed. The polished table no longer looked neutral. The leather chairs no longer felt accommodating. Everything about the space now carried weight, as though the room itself had realized it was no longer hosting a formality, but a reckoning. Mr. Barnes folded his hands atop the folder. Before we proceed, he said calmly, I need to make something very clear. My mother crossed her arms. My brother leaned forward, elbows on the table, jaw set.
My father said nothing, his gaze fixed somewhere just past the edge of the wood grain. This process, Mr. Barnes continued, is no longer about allocation alone. It is now about compliance. My mother laughed under her breath. Compliance with what? With your late husband's instructions, and with the law. That shut her up. He turned toward me. Miss Whitman, your father anticipated resistance. I nodded. He said he would. Mr. Barnes reached into the folder again and withdrew a thin stack of papers clipped together. These are timelines, correspondence logs, dates of meetings, requests made and responses or lack thereof. My brother scoffed. You're acting like this is a criminal trial. It isn't, Mr. Barnes said, but it could become one. That finally made my father look up. What do you mean by that? He asked. Mr. Barnes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid one of the documents across the table toward my father. Please read the highlighted section. My father hesitated, then picked it up. I watched his face change again, slowly, almost reluctantly. What is this? He asked quietly.
An internal memo, Mr. Barnes said, written by your financial advisor 3 years ago. My mother stiffened. That advisor works for us. Worked, Mr. Barnes corrected. He resigned. My father's voice was tight. Why wasn't I told? My mother snapped. Because it wasn't relevant. Mr. Barnes looked at her. It was very relevant. He turned the page. The memo outlines concerns raised regarding the selective withholding of financial disclosures from one beneficiary. My brother laughed harshly. Selective withholding? From her? She wasn't even involved. That was the concern, Mr. Barnes said. I felt my pulse steady. This part wasn't emotional for me. It was factual, and facts had a way of draining drama from the room. My father rubbed his jaw. You're saying information was hidden from her? Yes, Mr. Barnes said, repeatedly. My mother's voice was sharp, for her own good. The lawyer tilted his head slightly. That justification was documented, he said, and rejected. Rejected. The word hung in the air. My brother stood again. This is absurd. You're digging up old misunderstandings. Mr. Barnes didn't look at him. Mr. Whitman, he said, addressing my father, your daughter requested transparency on 3 separate occasions. Each request was acknowledged. None were fulfilled. My father closed his eyes briefly. I never saw those requests, he said. I know, Mr. Barnes replied. My mother's face flushed. This is turning into an ambush. No, it's turning into documentation. He slid another paper forward, this time toward my brother. This one, he said, is an email sent by you. My brother frowned, snatched it up, skimmed it, then his mouth tightened. That was taken out of context, he said quickly. The room waited. Mr. Barnes spoke. The context, he said, was a discussion about whether Ms. Whitman should be included in a quarterly review. My brother's voice rose. I was protecting her. No, Mr. Barnes said, you were excluding her. My brother looked at me, anger sharp and sudden. You didn't even care back then, he snapped. You were off doing whatever it is you do. I cared, I said quietly. I just stopped asking. My father looked at me then, really looked. When did that happen? He asked. I thought for a moment. After the 3rd time I was told not to worry about it. After I was laughed at for wanting to understand. My mother scoffed. We laughed because it was unnecessary. And yet, Mr. Barnes said, your husband found it necessary enough to intervene. He picked up the letter again. In his words, he said, what they call protection is actually control. My mother slammed her hand on the table. That is enough. This is character assassination.
Mr. Barnes' voice was calm but firm.
"It's testimony," he said. My brother paced a step, then stopped. "So what?" he said. "You're saying she gets everything and we just, what, accept it?" "No," Mr. Barnes replied. "I'm saying you comply." "With what?" my mother demanded. "With the stipulations," he said, "which include immediate transfer of control and full disclosure of all accounts, communications, and advisory decisions related to the trust over the last 7 years." My father's head snapped up. 7 years? He repeated. "Yes," Mr. Barnes said. "That's the review window specified." My mother's voice was barely controlled. "That's invasive." "It's legal," he replied. "And if we refuse?" my brother asked. Mr. Barnes met his gaze. "Then Miss Whitman has the right to escalate." All eyes turned to me again. Escalate. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply let the word exist in the room. My father cleared his throat. "What does escalation look like?" he asked. Mr. Barnes answered without hesitation. "Audit, litigation, potential claims of fiduciary breach." My mother laughed, but it sounded brittle. "You're threatening us." "No," Mr. Barnes said. "I'm informing you." My brother turned to me again. "You're really going to do this?" he asked. "After everything?" I studied his face, the frustration, the disbelief, the fear he was trying not to show. "I didn't start this," I said. "I'm just finishing what he began." My father leaned back in his chair, the weight of the moment finally settling onto his shoulders. "When did he decide all this?" he asked quietly. Mr. Barnes answered. "The day after he reviewed the correspondence." My father closed his eyes again. "I should have seen it," he murmured. My mother stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. I won't sit here and be accused." "Then you shouldn't have blocked the disclosures," Mr. Barnes said. Her head snapped toward him. "You have no proof." Mr. Barnes reached for the folder again. "I do," he said. He pulled out one final document and placed it squarely in the center of the table. "This," he said, "is a directive." My heart beat once. Slow. Steady. "It authorizes Miss Whitman," he continued, "to request independent review of all advisory relationships." My brother went still. "That includes," Mr. Barnes added, "terminating them." My mother's breath caught. "You can't mean—" "I do," Mr. Barnes said. I spoke then. "Effective immediately," I said calmly, "I'm exercising that authority." The words felt strange. Not heavy, just precise. Mr. Barnes nodded. "Noted." My father stared at me. "You're dismantling everything," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm understanding it." My brother shook his head. "This is revenge." I met his gaze. "No," I said. "This is correction." Silence fell again. Not heavy, final. Mr. Barnes gathered his papers. "I will coordinate next steps," he said. "You will each receive formal notices." My mother's voice was low and furious. "You think this makes you untouchable?" I looked at her. "No," I said. "It makes me accountable." She laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You always were difficult." I smiled faintly. "And you always underestimated that," I said. Mr. Barnes stood. "This meeting is adjourned," he said. My parents didn't move, neither did my brother. I picked up my bag, slipped the folder back inside, and stood. As I walked toward the door, my father spoke. "Eleanor," he said. I paused, turned. His voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. Did he ever forgive us? I considered the question carefully. "He didn't need to," I said. "He just needed the truth documented." I opened the door. Behind me, the room remained frozen, full of people realizing, far too late, that silence had never meant consent. And as I stepped into the hallway, one thought settled firmly in my mind.
This wasn't about inheritance. It never had been. It was about what happens when the person you underestimate finally stops waiting for permission. I didn't go home after the meeting, not because I was afraid of being alone, but because I needed space where the silence wasn't loud with history. I drove without a destination for nearly an hour, letting the city thin out, letting my thoughts stretch without interruption. By the time I pulled into the small cafe near the river, the one my father used to take me to when I was little, before everything became complicated, I realized something had shifted. Not around me, inside me. I wasn't replaying the meeting anymore. I wasn't cataloging every word, every expression, every moment of disbelief on their faces. I'd done that kind of emotional accounting my entire life. This time, I felt finished. I ordered tea, sat by the window, watched the water move steadily past the glass. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. "You didn't have to do this like that." I stared at the screen, then set the phone face down on the table.
10 minutes later, it buzzed again. "Mom's not taking this well." I didn't respond. Another message came through, this one from my father. "Can we talk? Just us?" That one lingered. I finished my tea before replying. "Tomorrow," I typed. "In public." There was a pause. Then, "Okay." I slipped my phone back into my bag and sat there a while longer, letting the river do what rivers do, move forward without apology. The formal notices arrived faster than I expected. By the next morning, my inbox was full. Emails from Mr. Barnes, from an accounting firm I'd never worked with, from a compliance officer introducing herself in light of recent developments. I read everything carefully, slowly. I didn't forward anything yet. I didn't reply in haste. I'd learned, painfully, that speed often benefits the loudest voice in the room, not the clearest one. Around noon, my mother called. I let it ring. She called again, and again. On the fourth attempt, I answered. "Yes," I said. "How could you do this?" she demanded, skipping any pretense of civility. "Do you have any idea what you've caused?" I leaned back against my kitchen counter, the sunlight warm on my shoulders. "I didn't cause anything. I revealed it." "You blindsided us," she snapped. "You embarrassed this family." I closed my eyes briefly. "You laughed at me in that room. Do you remember that?" "That was nerves," she replied sharply. "Everyone laughs when things are tense." "No," I said. "You laughed because you were sure I didn't matter." Silence crackled through the line. "You think you're so righteous now," she said coldly, "sitting there with your folder and your lawyer." "I didn't bring a lawyer. I brought information." She scoffed. "You've always liked to feel smarter than everyone else." I smiled faintly. "No," I replied. "I just stopped pretending I wasn't." Her breath was sharp. "You're tearing this family apart." I considered that. "No," I said finally. "I'm refusing to hold it together with silence." She hung up on me. I didn't call back. The meeting with my father happened the next afternoon. We chose a quiet restaurant, not fancy, not familiar, neutral ground. He arrived early, already seated, hands folded on the table like he wasn't sure what to do with them. He looked older than I remembered. Not frail, just smaller, as though something heavy had finally settled onto him. "Thank you for meeting me," he said when I sat down. I nodded. "You asked?" We ordered. Water for both of us. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. "I didn't know," he said finally, "about the emails, about the requests." "I know," I replied. He frowned. "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're asking now," I said. "You never asked before." He looked down at his hands. "Your mother handled a lot of things," he said quietly. I didn't interrupt. "I trusted that," he continued. "I trusted that she knew what was best." "And did she?" I asked gently. He didn't answer right away. "I should have paid more attention," he he said finally. I studied his face, the familiar lines, the man who'd once lifted me onto his shoulders and told me I could see everything from up there. When did you stop seeing me? I asked. His head snapped up. I never... When? I repeated. He swallowed. After you left home, he said. After you stopped needing us. I shook my head slightly. I didn't stop needing you, I said. I stopped being allowed to ask. He closed his eyes. That letter, he said, the one Mr. Barnes read, I didn't know he felt that way. He did, I said. He felt it enough to act. My father nodded slowly. He always was thorough. We shared a quiet, sad smile at that. I'm not here to punish you, I said, but I'm not here to protect anyone anymore either. He looked at me carefully. What happens now? He asked. I take responsibility, I said, for the trust, for the decisions, for the consequences. And your brother? He asked. Your mother? I thought about that. They get the truth, and they live with it. He sighed. Your mother won't accept this quietly. I know, I replied. Are you ready for that? He asked. I met his gaze. I've been ready my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it. The backlash didn't take long. Within days, extended family members began reaching out, some cautiously, some aggressively, a few pretending they were just checking in. My aunt left a voicemail full of concern that somehow managed to center entirely on how difficult this must be for your mother. A cousin messaged me late one night. You know she's telling people you manipulated Dad. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to a new folder I'd created on my laptop, documentation. It was growing quickly. Then came the first formal challenge. A letter from my mother's attorney arrived by courier, thick, officious, heavy with language meant to intimidate. I read it once, then again. Then I sent it to Mr. Barnes with a single line. Please advise. His response came within the hour. This was anticipated. Do not engage directly. I smiled. Of course it was anticipated. That evening, my brother showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door and found him standing there, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, eyes darting past me as if he expected someone else to appear. You look calm, he said. I am, I replied. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside, briefly. He paced my living room, glancing at the bookshelves, the framed photos, the plants by the window. You didn't know you lived like this, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? He gestured vaguely. Like this, put together. I didn't answer. He stopped pacing and faced me. You're really going through with this, he said. Yes. You know Mom's furious, he said. She's convinced you turned Dad against her. That's not what happened, I replied. She doesn't see it that way. I know. He ran a hand through his hair. You could still fix this, he said. You could soften it, share control, make it feel less hostile. I studied him. Why? I asked. So we can all move on, he said quickly. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Move on to what? I asked, pretending nothing happened. He frowned. You don't have to be so rigid. I'm not being rigid. I'm being clear. He exhaled sharply. You always do this, he said. You draw lines. Yes, I replied, because when I didn't, you crossed them. That stopped him. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I guess I never thought you'd push back like this, he said quietly. I didn't either, I said, until I realized what it cost me not to. He left shortly after that. Didn't slam the door, didn't say anything dramatic, just walked out. The next morning, Mr. Barnes called. They've filed a preliminary objection, he said. I wasn't surprised. On what grounds? I asked. Influence, he replied. Capacity. Procedural fairness. I smiled faintly. And, he said, none of it holds.
I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "There's something else," he added. I waited. "During the review," he said, "we uncovered irregularities." My pulse quickened, not with fear, but focus. "What kind?" I asked. "Advisory decisions made without documented consent," he said, "redirected communications, delays that benefited certain parties." I leaned against the counter. "Is it serious?" I asked. "Yes," he said simply, "and it changes the tone of everything." I nodded. "Proceed," I said. After the call ended, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring out at the city. This was the part no one had warned them about. Not the inheritance, not the authority, not the money. The scrutiny. Because when control is built on assumption, the moment someone asks questions, the whole structure starts to shake. And I was done pretending not to notice the cracks. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. Not because things were settled, but because I finally understood something fundamental. I wasn't fighting my family. I was stepping out of a story they'd written for me, and into one I could finally edit myself. And the truth, once documented, has a way of finishing what silence never could. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Not dramatic, not symbolic, just efficient. That, somehow, made it feel heavier. I arrived early, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to sit in the room before anyone else filled it with their expectations. The conference hall was smaller than the one at Barnes & Klein. No polished table this time, no soft lighting, just straight-backed chairs, pale walls, and a long surface designed for documents, not posturing. Mr. Barnes greeted me with a nod. "You ready?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. Across the room, my mother arrived with her attorney, heels sharp against the floor, posture rigid with the confidence of someone who had always believed the rules bent in her favor. My brother followed behind her, eyes fixed on his phone, jaw tense. My father came last. He looked at me when he saw me, just for a second. Then he looked away. The panel convened. Introductions were made, procedures outlined. Everything unfolded the way processes do, methodically, impersonally, without regard for the stories people tell themselves to survive. My mother's attorney spoke first. He used words like misunderstanding, family dynamics, unintentional oversight. He suggested my father had been influenced during a vulnerable period. He implied I had misinterpreted my role, exaggerated my exclusion, misunderstood intentions. I listened without reacting. When he finished, Mr. Barnes stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He presented facts. Emails with timestamps, advisory memos, correspondence chains that told a story no one could interrupt. He showed how requests were acknowledged and ignored, how information flowed around me, never to me, how decisions were made in rooms I was never invited into, about assets I was later told didn't concern me. Then he introduced the irregularities. The room shifted. The panel leaned forward. My mother's attorney objected, softly, carefully, the way people do when they realize they're no longer in control of the narrative. Mr. Barnes responded with documentation, dates, signatures, comparisons. And then came the moment I hadn't anticipated, not because I didn't expect it, but because I hadn't prepared for how quiet it would be. My father spoke, not at length, not defensively. "I didn't know," he said, "but I should have." The room stilled.
I trusted systems I didn't understand, he continued, and I didn't ask who they served. My mother turned toward him sharply. This isn't the time. It is, he said. That was the first time I'd ever heard him interrupt her. He looked at the panel. My daughter didn't manipulate anyone, he said. She was excluded. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable, decisive. The panel thanked him and continued. When it was over, the ruling was clear. The trust stood, the authority remained, the objections were denied. But that wasn't the real conclusion. The real conclusion came in the recommendations. Independent oversight, formal restructuring, a full audit, not punitive, corrective. My mother sat very still. She didn't argue, she didn't speak, she simply stared ahead, her certainty finally collapsing into something brittle and unrecognizable. Afterward, in the hallway, she approached me, not with fury, not with tears, with calculation. You didn't have to humiliate me, she said quietly. I looked at her. I didn't humiliate you. I stopped protecting you. She studied my face, searching, perhaps, for the daughter who would flinch, apologize, soften. She didn't find her.
You think this is power, she said. I shook my head. No, I said. This is accountability. She turned away without another word. My brother lingered. You happy? He asked. I considered the question honestly. No, I said, but I'm not small anymore. He nodded once, as if accepting something he'd resisted for years. I guess, he said quietly, we never really saw you. I met his gaze. I know, I said. The months that followed were quieter, not peaceful, but honest. The audit unfolded slowly, thoroughly. Relationships changed, not explosively, but irrevocably. Some family members stopped calling, others reached out awkwardly, unsure how to speak to me now that I no longer fit the version they'd memorized. I didn't correct them. I didn't explain myself. I focused on the work, on learning the systems I now governed, on understanding what had been hidden behind jargon and deflection, on making decisions with clarity instead of permission. One afternoon, as I sat in my office reviewing a report, I came across a note my father had written years ago, one I'd never seen. She notices everything, it read. That scares people. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. For so long, I'd believed my quietness was invisibility. I'd been wrong. It was restraint. And restraint, when paired with truth, is powerful. I didn't win because I outplayed anyone. I won because I stopped accepting laughter as an answer. Because I brought a folder into a room where people assumed I'd bring nothing. Because I let the truth speak louder than my voice ever had. The irony isn't lost on me. They laughed when I arrived, not because I didn't belong, but because they never imagined I would. And the lawyer didn't go pale because of money. He went pale because he recognized something far more unsettling: preparation.